Shana Tova, Mel. Can you hear me? Yes, right? Hopefully they're all coming. God willing, they're all here. We had a whole house for dinner. It was like crazy and fun. They all started arguing as soon as it was time to say brachot. So it was kind of. We did cook. Just through Chag, and then they got to go back to school. I don't think so. So, yeah, and it's for one day, so they fly up and fly back, I don't know. Supposed to be able to see with, I can't kind of see. Are you going to use this one tonight?
This microphone?
Yeah.
I use mostly this one. I think maybe only to the end of the service for Amidah or something.
Okay. You'll just pull to the side and I'll stand on that side or whatever?
Yeah,
or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, mostly you can use it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to use this one.
Okay.
Because they tell me that I don't stand still. So when I try to sing when I move my head, then they can't hear. So I don't know if that's true or not. But, you're going to start with your nigun?
Yeah.
And then keep singing it, right? And I'm going to talk over you, and then we'll go to Baruch.
Oh, yeah. So you're going to, I'm going to do the nigun.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause each time, and then you're going to say something, then continue with the nigun like that?
Yeah, you're just going to do the nigun, and then just lower it down.
Yeah.
When you lower the sound down, I'll talk over the top of you. I have a little thing here.
Yeah.
So we come together, we pray, each one of us, right? Okay. And then you'll just pick up the nigun again until we, for Baruch. Liz, you too. This is the proper way they tell me to these days.
days, and then tomorrow it has to be 90.
Yeah, better. I think we can start. Shana Tova, everyone.
Shana Tova.
It's Rosh Hashanah. Anyone believe it? I barely believe it. We're going to start to sing together. My holy friends, we embark on a journey together in more ways than one this year. Us together, me here on this pulpit, and also just moving into this high holiday season. And as we begin to take these steps together, let us do our best to open our hearts. And before we rise for Baruch Hu and we begin our formal prayers over the next 20-some days of these high holidays, I just want to offer a couple words of my own prayer. So, Rabbono Shel Olam, Master of the world, we've come together to pray as a congregation. Some of us in this room and some of us in their homes all over town, in this town and in lots of other towns that we know are watching too. And each of us comes before you with special hopes and dreams. Each of us has personal worries and concerns. Each of us has a prayer that no one else can utter. And each of us brings praise no one else can speak. And each of us feels a joy that no one else shares. And each of us has regrets that only we can know. And so we gather to offer words of prayer. And God, we ask if we are weary to give us strength. And if we feel discouraged to give us hope. And if our hearts have been chilled by indifference, we ask you, God, to warm them with your mercy and inspire us with the glowing spirit of these high holy days and this holy night. So I ask you all to rise in all the ways that you're able. So take care of yourselves over these holidays so we rise physically when we can, spiritually, emotionally, with our minds, with our dreams, with who we could be in the world. We're on page 5 as we begin with the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated.
מעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני כי הן חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהן נגד יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני
Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel used to tell a story about when he was a schoolboy that he was very, very forgetful. Anybody like that as a kid? Anybody? I'm still like that. Very forgetful, and he would always lose all of his things. So can you imagine every morning you have to get ready for school and you say, where's your stuff? And you don't know, right? You don't know where it is. So his parents developed a system for him so that he would remember. So they taught him at the end of the day when he came into the house, he would carry this little notebook with a pen and a pencil, and he would write down where he placed his things. So he would go through, his day, and before he went to sleep, he would say, my clothes are on the chair, my hat is in the closet, my books are on the desk, my shoes are by the door, and then he would write the very last one, and he'd say, and I'm in bed. That's how he'd write it. And then you can guess what happens, right? So he'd tape this little note on his alarm clock. It'd go off in the morning. And then he would wake up, take the note, and then he would go around the house, and he would say, look, my clothes are on the chair, like ticked, right? They're there. And then he would say, my hat was in the closet, and he would find it. Amazing. And then he would say, the books were on the desk, and they were on the desk. And he would say, my shoes are over there by the door. He would find his shoes. But then he would come to the last one, and it says, and I'm in bed. And then he would look, and he wasn't there. So he said it trained him in some way to ask every single day, if I'm not in bed, where am I? Where am I? Right? That's what we come here to do, to ask this question of ourselves, to say, where are we? And if we're going to do that, if we're going to search with open hearts, to really say, where are we? Right? We say that on an individual level, and we say that on a communal level every single year. Are we wealthier in the ways that wealth matters? Are we wiser? Are we happier? Are we more lonely? Are we more of a mensch? Are we? I don't know. Where are we this year? But if we're going to do it, we have to ask ourselves this question seriously, to say, where are we and where am I? So we're going to recite the words of the Shema together. They're on page 6. But before we do that, I think it's hard to transition into being Rosh Hashanah. Today's Monday, right? It was just a Monday this afternoon. Walking here, it felt like a Monday, not like Rosh Hashanah. So I ask you to take a few deep breaths. And I asked Annette, and hi Annette Dempsey, to sing with me tonight. And they made a choice for their family, which I'm glad they're made. Right? They just became uncomfortable thinking about gathering. And then I asked my daughter to sing with me. And I don't know where she is, so she's not here. So you're going to get me. I apologize for that. But really, will you just try to take 3 big, big breaths? 3 is a number in our tradition of a chazakah. It means I'm really trying to do it. Like take 2 and center yourself. You made it here, but now make it here. Like be in this room. Be in a prayer space. Listen, Israel, Adonai, our God is one. Listen, Israel, Adonai, our God is one. Listen, Israel, Adonai, our God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך.
Adonai Elohim Emet. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא דהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראובנך בוקר ים לפני משה, זה אלי אנו ועמדו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני. איי 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 גאל ישראל.
Hashkivenu is on page 9.
ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. תיקעו בחודש שופר בכסה ליום חגנו, כי חוק לישראל הוא משפט לאלוהי יעקב. חצי קדיש. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וילמד דברי חירותי, וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגאלה וזמן קריב.
We rise together on page 11 for the Amidah. My family, my wife Sharon and my daughter Yara over there, we used to daven in a minyan in Jerusalem in a place called Kol HaNeshama. And there the rabbi of that shul used to say a couple things about prayer. He said, if you came to be a spectator, you'd be bored. Right? That's how he started. If you came here just to watch and be passive, you'll be bored. And then he said prayer is like jazz music. Any jazz fans? Anybody likes jazz, right? So he said, look, if you're into jazz, you know that sometimes the musicians all play together, right? And other times, they like go off, right? They go into their own place. They all go into their own world. But in both cases, they create beautiful music. So I say that to you because we're about to enter this Amidah that we're going to say many times over the next days together. And I don't want you to feel pressure to be on any page. So just because I said we're on some page, but if you have a thought that takes you back to a place or in you read a word or a concept that allows you to kind of open up and dream, and maybe I could do that, don't listen to me. Just stay where you are. If you just want to close the book and try to feel some presence beyond, do that too, right? Like, just do what works for you. So, and sometimes we'll be on the same page and sometimes we won't, but it'll be beautiful either way. So we're going to begin on page 11. The Amidah, obviously, we say silently. So a few moments of reflection in the Hebrew or the English, the prayers of your heart. you're still davening, please continue at your own pace. Take your time.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
That's my daughter Yara. That's my daughter Yara.
יערה יישר כוח.
You can be seated. We're on page 19 for Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
ויעלמא דבר חירותי וימלך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלה ובמקרב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לאור המולול בעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתחלש מדי קודשה. בריחו לעילה מכל לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תוש וחתה מלחמתה נמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותם ודהון דכל ישראל כנמבוהון דבשמיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו וכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו Amen.
Shana Tova, everyone.
טובה ומבורכת.
I feel like we should be saying Shechianu all the time, like that we just get to be in the same room together. I don't know your name back there in the back. Hi. I really loved when I saw you wave at a friend across the way. It's one of the really great parts about gathering together again at Rosh Hashanah and the Chagim, right? That we just don't see some folks. And it feels like we haven't seen some folks in a long time. That's Megan, right? Yeah, Megan I've seen, I think, once in 3D. Hi, nice to see you, like in person. I really feel a deep sense of gratitude that I get to stand here and ask for a few moments of attention. It's not a small thing for people to pay attention these days, right? And I feel privileged and blessed to be joining you, right, to join Congregation Shaarie Torah. And I've loved learning the long and impressive history of the community. Like, you know it well. People are really proud of it, and they want to share it with me. Cantor Vitells has been amazing at welcoming me and helping me get acclimated, so I can't thank you enough for that. Rabbi Rose has been a tremendous help to me. He's been generous with his time and his spirit. I've got to talk to Rabbi Zuckerman a couple times on the phone, right? That's been fun, right? No, it's been great. It's been really great. The first time someone just handed me the phone and was like, it's Zuki, talk to him, right? So I was like, okay, hi. And I really do feel like I got to know Rabbi Geller a little bit better because when my books came, I had 70 boxes of books delivered. My wife will tell you they belong here and not in our house. 70 boxes of books delivered, and I got to move some books around, but when I moved some of Rabbi Geller's books, I found 2 composition books that were his when he was in rabbinical school. And he took notes in 1943 and in 1944 where he was taking classes with Rav Soloveitchik and asking questions like, how do you give a sermon to a modern American audience, right? Like, I think I had that same class, like in 2006, it's just 60 years difference. So when I read his Hebrew was a little easier for me to read than his English. but his questioning and his learning, what he did, like his notes in the margins, they were really rich in Torah and like really tender and heartfelt at the same time. So I came to feel more about why this community was blessed to learn with him and to walk with him for so long. I'm thankful for the warm and kind welcome and well wishes that so many have freely expressed to me and my family. I have found that there is just a kind of overflowing well of goodwill for Shaarie Torah and with the members of this community and beyond, right? That's a really nice thing to encounter. And the other thing that's really new for me that I've really enjoyed too is I've learned like the multi-generational involvement and leadership and support for Shaarie Torah, but not just Shaarie Torah, the larger community. In LA, no one stays, right? No one's from there, and no one stays there. So you don't have 3 or 4 generations of people all in the same place that says, I remember when my grandmother or my grandfather, or maybe my great-grandmother and grandfather used to be on the wall downstairs, right? It's a pretty impressive thing, and it's very heartwarming for me. And for those that I haven't met yet, I look forward to doing so. I've been working really hard to meet folks one-on-one. I have made a goal for myself that I would do that at least once a week with at least one new congregant every week. I'm ahead of my goal so far. So if I have not spoken with you and you get a call from me or from Linda in the office saying, Rabbi would like to talk with you, don't get scared. Like, don't get nervous. Like, I'm not calling to ask you to donate money or to volunteer or to join a committee. Those will all come later. All those calls will come later. And I want you to know that I'm not calling just because I'm a nice guy or something like that. Part of my Jewish life is rooted in some of our great Jewish 20th century existential philosophers. And you know some of their names, like Martin Buber and Franz Rosenzweig. I particularly love a French Jewish philosopher named Emmanuel Levinas. Levinas is the kind of writer that you read a paragraph and you're really sure he said something important, but you have no idea what he said. So you have to like read the same paragraph over and over, and then you get like 2 or 3 paragraphs later and you have to go back to the first one because that one might make sense now, right? Like you can do it. But he says something I think that's compelling. Well, it's compelling to me on how we live as Jews in the modern world. He said that in this world, like the world where we're free citizens, where we can choose in or out of anything that we want, he said the only way people understand what it means to be responsible for another is to know them. He said that's it, this idea of mitzvah, that I'm going to show up because I'm obligated, because God said so, or because our tradition said so, and that's enough. It's not enough. He said, you know when I'll show up for you and when you'll show up for me? When we know each other. That's when we'll know. And the word mitzvah itself, if we take it from Aramaic rather than Hebrew, means connection. That's what it means, the thing that can connect me to something else. So he said, like, if you want to know that word, if you want to understand mitzvah, we don't live in a shtetl, right? That's not how it's going to be. If you want to know it, you got to know people. You have to look in their eyes. You have to hear their story. You have to know what they're passionate about. You have to know what their fears are. You have to know. And if we knew each other, and you know that's true in your own life, right? I mean, you know the people that you show up for and the people that you don't show up, and it's usually not the strangers, right? Sometimes strangers, but not always strangers. So I'm invested in knowing you and helping this congregation thrive as a place that deeply, deeply values community and our tradition and has a serious commitment to kindness. It's something the world needs more and more of. So I meet with a lot of people, right? I meet with a lot of people. I've been doing rabbi stuff for a long time, since 2006 officially, and I've done a lot of these one-on-one meetings with people, a lot. A couple of years I averaged over 100 in a year, like one-on-ones, just 45-minute coffee dates and things. And when I sit with people after they get over the nervous part, about the money and all that. So I can't tell you how many people I've sat with that just never talked to a rabbi, ever. Like, they've sat in the pews, but they never, had coffee. I don't know. It's not weird to me, but it was weird to them. It was strange. It was new. So when I sit with them, they ask me. I ask them questions about them. They ask me questions about me, right? So they ask me the things you would expect them to ask me. They say, how you doing? How are you finding Portland? They say, tell me about your family. Half of you are living in San Diego this year. They've read the little bio thing. They ask me maybe why I became a rabbi. Some people will ask me that. And some other ones, I call them the brave ones. Some other ones ask me things like, is this stuff real? Like this God stuff, is it real? Right? Like, do you actually feel anything? Some people act like I have a blue phone I can just call like straight upstairs. It's in the drawer on the right. You can just pull it out, call right up. Sometimes they're asking, like, can you help me feel it too? Like they're asking that kind of stuff. But they're always asking, and I've come to play a little game. It's mostly for my own entertainment. That before I will tell them anything about myself, I say to them, why don't you tell me who I am? Right? Who do you think I am? Who do you think I am? And then all of their assumptions about the rabbi will come out about who I am. So here are some of the things I've heard. I have heard that I must share similar memories as their ancestors who came from the old country with long flowing beards and black hats and dark coats, the owners of wise eyes, and they had like these big heavy books in their hands. That must be some part of my story. And then I say, no, that's not it. I don't know. I don't have any of those. And they say, you must have... They assume that I fondly remember my youth, like growing up in an observant family where education was a priority, and I learned in one of the finest day schools, and I was groomed under the tutelage of great teachers who infused in me this love of Torah and learning. And then I say, no, not me. Some assume that because of my accent, that either I'm from Canada or I grew up in a kibbutz in Israel, and maybe I worked in the refit with the cows or something and spent afternoons with my friends in the sun. But no, I didn't do that. And some assume that I remember spending my free time building my most important relationships in like a Jewish youth group or something like that, right? And maybe soaking up Jewish living in summer camp. And then I say, no, I was never in a youth group. I never went to summer camp. And they say, okay, so you must have at least had a marvelous bar mitzvah, where you demonstrated your budding genius at the tender age of 13 by wowing this congregation with mastery of trope and sermon giving. And I say, I still can't do that. I still can't master trope or sermon giving, right? Some of the trope I can get. Someone told me I read like a rabbi. I took it as a compliment. But no, I didn't do those things either. So some say, I know. Like lots of kids grew up like that, right? They grew up in which they didn't have some formative education at home, but they went off to college, and then they met someone at Hillel or something, and then they got turned on, and then they started to explore what their Judaism meant to them. And maybe that Hillel director pushed me towards the rabbinate, and then I say, no, I worked 3 jobs through college. There was no time for Hillel. I never went there. So some folks say, you just must be from like a secular Jewish family, right? Like where you didn't really celebrate holidays, and Judaism just wasn't that important to your family. And then I say, no, not that either. And then we get to some point in which I share with them that I don't have any of those memories. I have none of those experiences. And the reason I don't have them is because I wasn't born Jewish. So some people say, wow, that's interesting, right? A few people I've heard like all of the whole oxygen out of their bodies like disappear. I say I wasn't born Jewish, and they go, something like that, right? Something like that happens, and I say, it's okay, right? It's okay. You see, I chose my Jewish life over 25 years ago. I converted to Judaism. And in this effort of knowing each other, right, to say that we will show up and we'll understand mitzvah when we know each other, I'll share a little of me so that you have a better sense of who I am. And I can't share so much in just the limited time that I have, but I'll give you kind of some of the big points of who I am and why it matters so much to me that I'm standing here. So I grew up in a family with very limited financial means. We lived in some of the roughest neighborhoods in town. And on my 15th birthday, I became homeless. I was never houseless. I just left my parents and my grandparents, and I was on the street living on my own, sometimes in a car, sometimes with other friends. I always had people that would kind of look after me and put a roof over my head, but I left home at 15 and have been independent since then, living, working, caring for myself since 15. I left high school at the beginning of my junior year. I knew everything that there was to know, and I was Superman, impenetrable. I was really smart. I don't know what I was doing, but I left. I sort of finished my sophomore year. I left, and then I worked all kinds of jobs and stuff like that. And then I went back to junior college in my 20s, and really during that time, in my early 20s, that I was starting to look for answers to really big questions. Right, really big questions like what's this whole life thing about, and why is it so unfair? Why is it that you can be born to one family and you get a life, you get this range of life like this, and if you're born to another family, your opportunities look like this? Right? That's not kind and loving or good or anything. I was really angry about it, but I started to ask, why are we here? Does God exist? And in my when I was in university, I was introduced to a Jewish professor at my college, and he didn't know much at all about Judaism. He knew a lot about Buddhism. He was a Jew-boo. Have you met any Jew-boos? They're amazing. I love them so much, right? That guy knew how to breathe. He was the calmest human that I'd ever met in my life. He was so measured. Everything oozed out of him was just like love and goodness, and it was so different than anyone I knew, right? I was totally attracted to it, and I studied with him for a few years, and then I asked him about this Jewish part. Could you tell me about this Jewish part? But he didn't know, so he sent me to a friend who happened to be a Reform rabbi. And I began studying with him. And then after about 18 months, he said, if you're interested in converting, you should go find yourself a rabbi, which was very confusing because I had just studied with a rabbi for 18 months, right? And he said, no, look, you don't come to my shul, and you don't take part in the life of my shul, and you can't live Jewish life alone. That's what's been so hard about the last year and a half. We're not built like this. Right? We can't do it by ourselves. So I know people have tried, right? You gather little pods and you've had your friends and you do something and you try to recreate what communal life brings, and yet it still doesn't fully recreate it. That's why one of the reasons why we were so committed to opening. Right? If it's the ways that it could be safe, we were going to sit here together. For those that felt comfortable, we're going to do that. So he sent me to this guy. I studied for 2 years, and then I found my rabbi. My dearest, closest friend is Rabbi Bradley Shavit Artson, who, God willing, will be here in October when I get installed on this bima. That sounds a little bit like they're going to screw my shoes to the floor. I don't know what that means. I'm going to get installed, but I will be installed. And then he got me to work for the synagogue, and I ran this youth group. And during that time, I finished high school. I got my bachelor's degree. I met my wife, Sharon, who's sitting here, and we moved to Israel so I could study for graduate school at Tel Aviv University. My mentor, Rabbi Artson, he kept telling me you should go to rabbinical school, and I said, are you kidding? I'm a kid from the streets. There's no way that I'm going to do this. Nobody wants me to be the rabbi. There's no, right? And I told him no for about 7 years. I just said no. And then he's the kind of guy that doesn't really take no for answers. So he would say things to me like, Gary, that little voice in your head that knows that I'm right, it will just get louder. So you could save yourself a lot of heartache and go to rabbinical school now, right? He would write me a letter of recommendation for a job or for an internship, and he would say glowing things, and he'd put a sticky note that said, you're doing the wrong thing with your life. When you're ready, rabbinical school is waiting for you. That's what he would do to me. And I ended up listening to him, and I came to understand that I had a calling to be a teacher and a leader amongst the Jewish people. Since then, if you read the bio, you know that I served a large congregation in Los Angeles. I was the vice president at a liberal arts college for 5 years, and I've worked as a hospital chaplain. And now I'm here. Now I get to stand here with with our amazing Cantor, in which we try to open the gates and help us grow into the best people that we can be. And I chose to share with you some of that tonight because I think it's imperative that we know each other. I believe Levinas. I believe him when he says that once we know each other, we'll show up for each other. Right? I believe him. And you know that Martin Buber takes it a little bit step further, another existential philosopher. But Rabbi Buber says that when we can actually look at another human being and see them in their wholeness and their greatness, when we see their humanity, that's the only way we feel God's presence. That's it, he says. I don't know if he's right, but that's what he says, right? Which is to say he's holding it up as such an important value that when things that come from one heart and are touched by another heart, that's when God's presence is palpable, right? That's what it is. So I hope and pray that we come to see each other and to know each other, and that you'll answer the call, and you will have coffee or tea or something together, and that we as a community value human dignity and the uniqueness and beauty of every single person who walks through our gates, our Shaarie Torah, as one of the most high and important Torah values we can have, right? There are a lot of important mitzvahs, but it's one of the most. So I chose also to share with you a bit about me, because I know that where we come from, that our background, that our stories, that our experience shapes how we live right now, right? Sometimes it's overwhelmingly shaping how we're living right now. And I'm pleased to tell you I don't have Jewish baggage. I have lots of baggage. I just don't have Jewish baggage, right? But I know that some Jews have Jewish baggage, and they're uncomfortable coming in these doors, or they start to feel like they're 12 again, or whatever it might be, or they had a bad experience with this thing or that thing, and it's hard for them, right? And it's hard for them. I know that that is true. There had been too many negative experiences, right? And what I want to tell you is that what I know to be true is that far more significant than the memories that we have of our past, right? Our tradition says that more important than those are the memories that we're actively creating for our future. Like, what am I doing right now to invest in how I'm going to be a year from now? It's a hard thing to get my head around, and especially in a culture that has instant gratification. I want it now, now, now. But how do I make good choices for that me down the road? How do I do that? And our tradition demands of us. It tells us that our yesterdays, whatever our experiences were growing up, whatever those were, they do not necessarily determine our tomorrows. They don't. That you have a choice, that there is a way that we can make different choices, that we can learn, we can grow, we can find different communities, right? There's ways we can become better versions of ourselves, and I know that to be true because I'm standing here. And I know it. From the inside out, I know it. So on this Rosh Hashanah Eve, the question I want to leave all of you with, is not where'd you grow up, right? Or how was shul for you when you were young? Or what's your favorite Jewish memory? Those are important, but that's not the one I want to invite you into tonight. What I want to pose to you is, and really to us, is what new memories are you actively shaping? What are you molding for yourself right now? What are you molding for your children, your grandchildren, for your partners? What are you molding for the future of this synagogue, right? For the future of Jewish Portland? What are you investing in, right? Whatever that we're doing now is what we're going to have later. So these high holidays, these 10 days of awe, this journey that we're all on, I want to add something to your to-do list. I'm sorry, but I do. I actually want to add a few things. One will come tomorrow. But this one is about you and your connection to Jewish living. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is to commit yourself to grow Jewishly in some way over the next 12 months. So we're back here next year that you said, I did invest in my future memories. Right? So take a mitzvah, just one. Take one mitzvah. It might be something you already like and you just want to learn more about or deepen in yourself, right? That I just want to get deeper into that thing. Grow in it. I want to grow in it. It might be something that you always hated and you just want to like lean into this thing to like really understand why it always bothered me so much. And lots of our greatest growth comes out of being uncomfortable, right? Let me just lean into it. It's time bound. It's just going to be for a few months. I don't have to ever do it again. But to try to put yourself in a place to grow, to pick one mitzvah and to make it a habit of some way that I'm going to grow Jewishly. So that could be a lot, right? It could be a serious commitment to volunteering, right? It could be that you're going to organize the manner in which you give tzedakah differently, right? A serious Jewish mitzvah. That you could commit to coming to a minyan, right? To just showing up in that place where I'm not always comfortable. I don't know. Right now we're online, right? So you can do it from you only got to put a shirt on, right? Have a cup of coffee. Like, right? You could just do it and see what it feels like to hear the words of the prayer book many times, like regularly, wash over you. And maybe it'll be good. Maybe it won't. I don't know, right? But the only way I know that we grow is if we try to lean into something else. You can learn to read Torah or Haftarah. You can learn a Jewish skill. You can learn to be a Gabbai and be here on Shabbat calling people to Torah. You could develop a morning spiritual routine that isn't the minyan but something else, but that reminds me every day that I'm called to be God's partner. And how am I going to do that in the next, 14 hours when I'm awake? You could start a Musar learning group. Anybody know Musar? Musar's been around for a really long time, since the 800s. And every time our tradition gets a little bit too black and white, too yes and no, too yes mitzvah, right? This other thing bubbles up that says, how about be a great human? Like, how about grow your soul? How about do that? Usually groups of 10 or 12, you can do it in your house. I'll come visit you, right? You'll serve me something good. You could get a listserv or something that gives you a little Torah to reflect on every day. Right? There's a lot to do. If you don't know what to do, but you want to take it seriously, I'm happy to sit with you and figure it out. No guilt, right? There's none of that. No guilt, no judgment. But just the commitment to lean in, to say I'm going to grow Jewishly. I'm going to invest in myself and the memories that I'm going to have when I sit here next year. Right? God willing that we're sitting here next year with this place full. So thinking about that, I just want to say one more thing. That our God and our tradition never asks us for perfection, right? I know that there's a feeling sometimes if I can't do it, great. If I can't, it's a feeling I have a lot, right? If I can't be awesome at it, I don't want to try. But our tradition doesn't work that way. It asks us for progress, right? It asks us to grow, not perfection. So just try. Commit yourself to something that says, I'm going to grow Jewishly this year. So as I conclude, it's my hope and my prayer tonight that we all know, for sure, 100%, that our yesterdays don't necessarily dictate tomorrow. They don't, right? And to know that our tradition is a gift, and it's beautiful, and I know that it creates lives of meaning and purpose, and I invite you to commit to look forward to actively making new memories, right? To take us somewhere else, to take you somewhere else. So may this new year of 5782 be a year when we take time to reconnect to our deepest dreams and our future memories, and may we all do the work that we need to do to make those new memories a reality. And I bless all of you with a Shana Tova. I say Chag Sameach, many blessings for a sweet and happy and most importantly healthy new year for all of us. Shana Tova, everyone. We're going to rise together on page 24 for Kiddush and Shechianu, because I said I want to say Shechianu all the time. I'm up here, but we'll say it together. There's a cup back there, I think. Oh, he didn't pour. Can I pour for you?
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשתנו במצוותיו ותיתן לנו באהבה את יום הזיכרון הזה, יום תרועה מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים. ודברך אמת וקיים לעד, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל ויום הזיכרון.
As we say Shechianu, I'll ask you to bring your loved ones close to you. So if they're here next to you, put your arm around them. If they're somewhere else in the world, bring them in anyways. Hug them really close.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
We remain standing for Aleinu on page 25.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתן גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כבארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. ואלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד על כן נקבל לך המלכות תמלוך על מלך כי המלכות שלך היא. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
You can be seated. We're going to continue with the psalm for the season, Psalm 27, on page 27.
לדוד עיני אוריב אישי מאירה, יפחד מכרם. אחת שאלתי. לו האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קווה אל אדוני, חזק ויאמץ ליבך, וקווה את אדוני.
It's at this moment before we conclude that we bring to mind those that are our loved ones and people we cared about that are no longer physically in this world with us but continue to walk with us and inspire us. So for those that are maybe reciting a yard site or currently in mourning, or anyone that has a need or desire to recite the words of the mourner's Kaddish tonight, I will just ask you to please rise. We're on page 26. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbi
Amen.
Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon v'chaye dechol Beit Israel ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'lamei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Israel v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel v'imru Amen.
Amen.
The last line asks for the one who creates peace in the heavens to create peace and wholeness for us, for all of Israel, and for all of humanity. We'll all say together,
Amen.
Amen. One short story before we close with Yigdal on page 28. This story is about a poor man who tries to get into one of the biggest, richest synagogues in town. And the members of that rich synagogue were too polite to say to him that they didn't want him as a member. He was too disheveled, right? He didn't look right. So they kept putting him off with one excuse after another, and they would say, listen, you need like a letter of reference. They would say, we got to wait to submit your application to the committee meets, and it went on and on and on, and then the guy just kind of gave up, right? That's what he did. But then the story says that it was a week before Rosh Hashanah, and he says, this isn't right, like it's Rosh Hashanah, I got to try again. So he goes and he tries again, but he got the same thing. He was rebuffed again, same excuses, and he left, and when he walked away, his head was low, and he began walking feeling downhearted and depressed, and he happened to bump into God. That's what he did. And God said, why do you look so sad? And the guy said, because I've been trying to get into that synagogue for months, and I can't get in. And God says, I know how you feel. I've been trying to get in that synagogue for years, and I can't get in either. Right? It makes no difference how lavish furniture is, how expensive bima stuff is. It doesn't matter how many times we say Baruch Atah Adonai in a place or not. Either love and compassion and caring and justice and mercy and understanding live in a place where God's not there. That's how it works. And my blessing really is that we commit ourselves during these 10 days, right, to search our hearts, to make a decision, to make the places we are, the places with our family and our community, in our neighborhoods, that we make those places a better place, a place of love, a place of compassion, a places of caring and justice and understanding. So we'll conclude with Yigdal, page 28.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח נמצא ואין אל מציאותו אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו אין לו דמות הגוף ואין לו גוף לא נערוך אליו קדושתו קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו. הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתן אוהב, אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו. לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד, נביא ומביט את אמונתו. תורת אמת נתן לעם אוהב, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו. לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו. צופה ויודע שתערנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו. גומל איש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרשעתו. ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפדות מחכה קץ ישועתו. מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו. מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו.
Shana Tova, everyone. A good and sweet year for all of us. Did you know this song? No. Thank you. That's it.
Tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Well, she didn't know it. I asked her if she knew this. I asked Shaarie if she knew this. Yeah. So happy to see faces.
Torah. We can do some more. Shir on the Bima. Just like a gorgeous voice. Maybe tomorrow think about something that you want to do.
We just asked my dad. Which one can she sing? He's like, oh.
Well, see you tomorrow then.
This needs to go to my